Lecturer Madam Chai Shin Ye. We are from Group 5. We will be presenting about Marxism theory in international relations. In this presentation, we will talk about the introduction, the explanation of this main theory, key concept and main arguments, founding scholars, analysis of this theory, comparison this theory with the other theories, impact this theory on IR, international relations, and conclusion of this theory. Because this theory explains how capitalism and economism inequality shape global politics. It is also questions global system, encourage change to reduce inequality or injustice. So all my group members, Nur Amira binti Rahim, she will be presenting about explanation of this theory. Fakur Razi Idris will be presenting about founding scholars. Nur Nadila will explain about the impact of this theory on IR. Then Nur Batrisha Rizalman will explain about comparison of this theory with other theories. And my name is Hilda Daniela bint Abdullah. I will be presenting about analysis of this theory. Viviana Rebecca Ananggang will talk about the key concepts, main arguments, and the conclusion of this theory. So I will start with the introduction. Marxism is another important theory in international relations or IR, which analyzes international politics based on the concept of capitalism, economic inequality, and class struggles. This theory was developed by Karl Marx in conjunction with Friedrich Engels. Contrary to other theories that emphasize either cooperation or national security, Marxism states that international relations are largely shaped by economic interests as well as the unequal relation between the elites and the poor in society.
Hello, my name is Amira and I will explain Marxism theory. Marxism is a political and economic theory developed by Karl Marx, and it mainly focuses on class struggle, inequality, and mostly capitalism. Marx believed that society is unfair and unequal because wealth are mostly controlled by the upper classes. And according to Marxism, society is divided by two main groups, which is the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. The bourgeoisie refers to the owners, the ruling classes that control businesses, industries, and just wealthy people. And meanwhile, the proletariat refers to the working class who provide labor and work for wages. Marxists believe that capitalism mainly benefits the bourgeoisie because workers produce goods and services, but the profits are mostly controlled by the upper class. As a result, workers are often exploited and receive fewer benefits compared to the owners. And Marxism also explains that economic power influences politics and society. People or groups with more money, with more wealth, will have more influences and control. Therefore, you know, as the word goes, the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. So, in the end, Marxist people see capitalism as a system that creates inequality between social classes. Next, I will be explaining Marxism in international relations. In international relations, Marxism explains how economic power affects relationship between countries around the world. Marxists believe that wealthy and developed countries often dominate poorer countries through capitalism, trade, and natural resources. Control of natural resources. Developed countries usually have stronger economies and greater influence over global markets. Because of this, developing countries often depend on them for investment, technology, and economic support. Marxists argue that this will create inequality between nations because rich companies continue getting more wealth and power. Marxism also explained that many international conflicts are connected to economic interests such as resources, trade, and also profits. For example, many multinational companies move factories to developing countries such as Bangladesh and Vietnam because labor is cheap. Workers produce products for global brands, but large companies from wealthier countries will gain most of the profit. Marxists view this as a form of exploitation under global capitalism. Therefore, Marxism remains important because it helps explain global inequality, economic dominations, and exploitation in international relations. And that's all from me. Next, Vivi will continue with her slides.
My name is Viviana Rebecca Anangang. I am going to present about key concept of Marxism in international relations. Firstly is capitalism. Capitalism is the core idea in Marxism. In capitalism, businesses and industry are privately owned and the main goal is to make profit. Marxists argue that capitalism creates inequality because wealthy countries and multinational companies gain more wealth while poorer countries provide cheap labor and resources. As a result, rich countries continue to become richer while developing countries struggle economically. Secondly is class struggle. Marx believed society is divided into two main classes. The bourgeoisies are the owner of the business and industries, while the proletariat are workers who sell the labor. Marxists argued that the bourgeoisies exploit workers by paying low wages while earning huge profit. In international relations, developed countries are often seen as the bourgeoisies because they dominate the global economy, while developing countries become dependent workers. Thirdly is exploitation. Exploitation happens when stronger countries or corporations gain unfair advantages from weaker countries. Marxists believe developed countries exploit poorer countries through unfair trade system, low wages and resource extraction. Developing countries often export raw materials cheaply but must import expensive finished products from the developed countries. This keeps poorer countries economically dependent. Fourth is imperialism. Marxists view imperialism as a result of capitalism. Powerful countries expand their influence to gain resources, labor, and markets for profit. During colonialism, European countries controlled territories in Asia and Africa, mainly for economic interests. Marxists also argue that modern globalization can be considered a new form of imperialism because powerful states still influence weaker countries economically. Lastly is dependency theory. Dependency theory explains that developing countries remain depending on the developed countries for loans, investment, and technology. Marxists argue that the international economic system benefits rich countries more. Because of this dependency, poorer countries face difficulties achieving economic independence and development. This is main argument of Marxism theory in international relations. Firstly, international system benefits rich countries. Marxists believe the international system mainly benefits capitalist countries. Powerful countries have greater influence over international organizations, trade agreements, and financial institutions. This allows wealthy nations to maintain their economic dominance over poorer countries. Secondly, is economics drives international relations. Unlike realism, which focuses on military power and security, Marxism argues that economic interests are the main causes of the international relations. Countries compete for oil, natural resources, markets, and investment opportunities because economic power is closely connected to political power. Thirdly, is capitalism causes global inequality. Marxists argue that capitalism creates unequal development. Developed countries continue to expand economically while many poorer countries experience debt, poverty, and unemployment. Globalization often benefits strong economics more than weaker states. Lastly is economic competition causes conflict. Marxists believe conflict and wars may occur because capitalist countries compete economically. Rivalries over colonies, resources, and market can increase tension between powerful states.
Moving on to the next part, which is founding scholars. Firstly, I will talk about Karl Marx, who lived from 1818 to 1883. He was a German philosopher, economist, and also a political theorist whose ideas completely changed how we look at global power. His core contribution to international relations is the theory of historical materialism. Essentially, Marx argued that history is not driven by big ideas or politics, but by economics. Whoever controls the economic system also controls the law, the government, and the foreign policy. We can see this clearly in his famous works. He co-authored the Communist Manifesto in 1848 and later wrote Das Kapital in 1867. Both of these texts provided a massive critique of how capitalism spreads and operates on a global scale. Karl Marx's biggest takeaway is that capitalism is inherently expansionist. He argued that a capitalist economy can never stay contained within its own borders. It is constantly forcing its way into new countries to find new markets, to extract cheap resources, and to exploit cheap labor. So, from Marx's perspective, international relation is not about states competing for honor or security, but rather about the global expansion of economic power. Next, another founding scholar for Marxism is Friedrich Engels, who lived from 1820 to 1895. He was a German social scientist, journalist, and businessman, and he served as Marx's closest collaborator. Engels brought a crucial and practical perspective to the theory because his family actually owned textile mills, meaning that he already observed the gritty and financial realities of industrial capitalism firsthand. His main contribution was providing the real-world data and funding that back up Marx's abstract theories. Engels didn't just support the ideas, but he also actively co-authored the Communist Manifesto, and after Marx passed away, he spent years editing and publishing the final volumes of Das Kapital to ensure their work survived. Looking specifically at global politics, Engels focused heavily on militarism and geopolitics. He analyzed how powerful nations use large standing armies, strong navies, and colonization to force open foreign markets and protect their international trade routes. Therefore, Engels demonstrated that state military power is weaponized in order to protect and expand economic wealth.
And now I will be talking about the analysis of this theory. Marxism theory sheds light on the reason why there exists a huge difference between developed and developing nations in the contemporary world. According to Marxist theories, capitalism enables developed nations to perpetuate their dominance through control over international trade, capital flows, technology transfer, and natural resource distribution. In addition, developing nations may be forced to become dependent due to providing low-cost labor and raw material and depending on developed nations for investment and manufactured goods. This way, developed nations continue to accumulate wealth and power while developing nations try hard to attain economic independence. According to Lucian's EPMIGUIAPDF, Marxism theory expands the concept of class conflict on the international level as well, since it divides the world into dominant centers and dependent peripheries. In such a way, developed nations have an opportunity to develop their economies via unequal relations in trade and economic exploitation of developing nations. Multinational companies also play a great role in this respect since they exploit cheap labor and other resources in developing nations. Also, according to International Relations, Marxism is critical of conventional IR theories for underplaying economic exploitation and inequality. Marxists claim that many international organizations and systems are meant to safeguard the interests of the capitalized states. Therefore, inequality is still evident due to the fact that there are more developed and underdeveloped nations in the world. Neo-Marxism is another important theory which includes the concept of hegemony proposed by Anthony Gramsci. Hegemony means that the powerful elites exercise their authority through ideas, culture, education, and media rather than just military or economic. For example, capitalism can be accepted as a norm in society as a result of the fact that powerful groups control the way people think and perceive the reality around them. Therefore, it is clear that power is not limited to the use of violence but also includes cultural influence.
My name is Nabadrisha binti Rizalman, and I will present on comparison, Marxism, and neoliberalism theory. Marxism focuses on structural exploitation and class struggle. The primary actor of Marxism is social class, which is Marxism not focused on countries, and it focuses on social class such as the rich who own businesses and the workers. The main goal of the Marxism is human emancipation, which is human freedom and equal wealth. It's for get rid of capitalist system, so rich people and rich country no longer exploit poor people and poor countries. Next is neoliberalism. This theory prioritizes free market principle, institutional cooperation, and economic independence. This theory also focuses on national governments as the main players. They also shared with international organizations such as United Nations, World Bank, and other large corporations. The main goal of neoliberalism is economic growth and global stability. The purpose is to use free trade and international organization to help countries working together to grow their economics and to prevent wars. Next is advantage and disadvantage of Marxism and neoliberalism theory. The advantage of Marxism theory is this theory provides strong frameworks, which is meant by looking at the global system, which is built like a pyramid. Marxism theory looks at the big rules of global businesses just to show that poor countries is not just unlucky, but the global system is rigged against poor people from the start. Next advantage of this Marxism theory is relevance to injustice, which is it is focused on exploitation and economic differences. This means that this theory is useful to explain what is real world greed and unfairness. It is perfectly explained that's why a billionaire or wealthy nations keep getting richer while the laborers make their products remain poor. The disadvantage of Marxism theory are lack of agency, which is it underestimate the capacity of states and individuals. Marxism theory ignoring the fact that leaders, voters, and small nations can make their own independent decision to change their futures. Other than that, this theory also failed of predictive, which is Marxist prediction has not materialized. Karl Marx predict about future that did not come true, whereas he predicted that workers in rich countries would overthrow their governments, but the capitalism survived and the capitalism grew stronger. Next is the advantage and the disadvantage of neoliberalism theory. The advantage of neoliberalism theory are this theory provides explanations on why states worked together through treaties, alliances, and institutions despite lacking a global government. It is also shows that by creating organizations like United Nations or trade group can help the countries to build trust, set fair rules, and solving problems together. Other than that is interdependence and peace. Economic interdependence, which is highlight on this advantage of theory, which is mean that they rely on each other to make money, which is to make the economic growth better in their country. while the disadvantage of this theory is ignoring the inequality, whereas neoliberalism overemphasizes cooperation. Means that this theory ignoring who gets the money and its focus on making the global economy grow, whereas it will make the rules of trade will benefit themselves and leaving the poor nations. Next disadvantage of this theory is neglect social costs, whereas its focus on market-driven solution. Neoliberalism prioritizes corporate profits and economic growth, which is often ignores several consequences like environmental destructions, climate change, and loss of local workers' rights.
My name is Nur Nadila, and I'm going to talk about the impact of Marxism on international relations and politics. So, the first one is it focuses on economic inequality in a global level. So, capitalist exploitation occurs when workers earn only enough to survive, while capitalists keep the profits created by workers' labor. Workers create more value through their labor than the wages they receive, while capitalists keep the extra profit and gain more wealth. Marxist and neo-Marxist theories in international relations focus on global economic inequality, meaning that the world is not equal in terms of wealth and power. So countries are split into rich, which is the core one, and the poor, which is the periphery one, where core countries are developed and industrialized, and periphery countries are less developed and dependent. Rich countries stay powerful by controlling finance, technology, and industry, while poor countries export raw materials and import expensive. The second one is critique of capitalism as a global system. The main economic inequality in capitalism grows between capitalists who control production and workers who are exploited. This inequality increases because capitalists gain wealth and power from ownership, while workers depend on wages and have limited control over economic resources. So Marxist approaches criticize capitalism by saying that it is not just an economic system inside one country, but a global system that affects all countries in the world. In this system, wealth and power are not shared equally. Instead, a small group of rich people, companies, and powerful countries gain most of the benefits. The third one is it redefining what power means in international politics. Marxism's idea of redefining power in international politics goes beyond the traditional view that power is mainly about military strength, alliances, and territorial control. Instead, it argues that real power often lies in economic structures, especially in who controls production, trade, finance, and natural resources. So, in this view, a state or group can be highly influential internationally even without strong armies if it dominates global markets, banking systems, or supply chains. Last but not least, it challenged to state-centric international relation theories. Marxism fundamentally challenges traditional international relation theories such as realism and liberalism, which place states at the center of global politics. In these theories, states are seen as rational actors that compete for power, security, and national interest in an anarchic international system. Marxism argues that this perspective is too limited because it ignores the deeper economic forces shaping world politics. Instead of focusing only on state behavior, Marxism emphasizes the importance of capitalism as a global system that structures relationship between countries.
In conclusion, Marxism theory in international relations explains how capitalism, economic inequality, and class struggle shape global politics. The theory argues that wealthy capitalist countries dominate and exploit weaker countries through economic control, trade systems, and access to resources. Marxism also highlights how globalization and international institutions often benefit developed nations more than developing countries. Furthermore, Marxism helps us understand important global issues such as poverty, imperialism, dependency, and unequal development. Although the theory has been criticized for focusing too much on economics and ignoring other factors like culture and nationalism, it remains relevant in today's international system because economic inequality and exploitation still exist worldwide. Overall, Marxism provides an important perspective for understanding the relationship between power, wealth, and inequality in international relations. That's all for today. Thank you.